Yo, what's going on, everybody? We are back again. Another WrestlePurists Podcast hosted by myself, Joe Hulbert, Manny the Hooper, and the lovely Charlie. We're back again. We are going to be, doing our usual Thursday show, of course, reviewing AEW Dynamite, touching on some news, and of course, it wouldn't be right if we didn't at least do our best to remember Terry Funk, who recently passed away. Of course, we're going to get right into everything. First things first, everyone please like, subscribe. Super chat if you're feeling generous, always appreciate. Turn on post notifications. Hope everyone is doing good, especially my fellow co-hosts. I'm going to go around and see how everyone's doing. I'm going to start with Charlie. Charlie, you've got so many different hairstyles now. It's like sometimes it's curly, sometimes it's straight, sometimes it's black, sometimes it's red. I think I've seen it green once or twice.
It was.
How are you doing? How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Celebrated my sister's birthday, dealt with a toothache, so swings and roundabouts, but it's been a good day overall. Excited for the weekend. Been testing out some things with my hair, which if you've watched any of my podcast appearances over the last couple of days, because I've done quite a few, but I've been testing some things out. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. Huge weekend coming up, absolutely. Three of us on the screen will be going to Wembley to see AEW All In. Manny, unfortunately, will not be joining us. We will not be getting on-site interviews and footage of Manny the Hooper outside of Wembley Stadium. It's heartbreaking news, I know. But Manny, are you looking forward to this weekend?
Yeah, it'd be fun. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been all right. But how you doing anyway? How's your day been, Manny?
Good. I'm on my third day in a row of eating Jersey Mike's. I've been converted.
Why?
It's actually pretty good. I mean, I like going to a place where... So I used to go to Subway, and then I saw Joe Diaz make fun of something he's called. It's like, that's where trash people go. And I guess I'll try Jersey Mike's. He's always talking about Jersey Mike's. So I went there. And since then, I mean, it's really good. I like going to a place where it tells me what I have to eat. Like this is what you have. These are your options. You can't customize them. So, just
living by the gospel of Joey Diaz. It's I don't think I'm surprised, Joe. But
no,
that's the Hooper, brother. That's the Hooper. Joe Hulbert, how are you doing today on this Thursday evening, mate?
I'm okay. I'm a little bit concerned about how easily led the Hooper is by podcasters, but as you said, it's not surprising. But I'm doing all right. We have a lot to talk about. Yesterday was pretty rough, but we go again, right? It is what it is. So we have some stuff worth talking about today. So happy to be here as always.
Absolutely. The past 24 hours has been very rough for wrestling fans and people just anything close to being involved with wrestling at all. The past 24 hours, the wrestling world has been mourning the very unfortunate death of the great Terry Funk, who passed away yesterday morning at age 79. Genuinely I know it gets thrown around a lot, he's the GOAT, he's one of the greats, there'll never be another, but Terry Funk definitely embodies all of those things. Absolutely. One of the greatest that ever lived. And is the more I kind of go back and like watch more wrestling and learn more about wrestling, it's like you find a more deeper appreciation exactly for Terry Funk. He's always someone as well that's like wrestling historians, people who have been in the business for a long time, followed it for a long time, and people who really, truly study the business. I know we're all fans and you shouldn't, dismiss other fans compared to others and that, but, there is people out there who are true, historians and, really study this. And those people all kind of float around the same conclusion that Terry Funk is genuinely the greatest to ever compete in professional wrestling. So, like I said, someone that I would definitely find more of appreciation, the more I kind of learn about him. It's very widely said that he had 3 different Hall of Fame careers wrapped into one career. He probably had another Hall of Fame career outside of that in just hidden gems and other stuff, He went through a career of very different, looks, roles, character changes, developments, reinventions, everything, all based on kind of where he was at the time. Genuinely one of the greats. But we'll all be, of course, like I said, we're just going to spend the start of this podcast of, just remembering the late, great Terry Funk. Joe, it was, even though it was tough, kind of the news coming out yesterday, we know Terry Funk in recent years has not been in the greatest shape, and it did kind of feel like the day was coming, but even still, it was so deflating to know that day had finally happened yesterday. But I guess kind of like a silver lining of yesterday was kind of all the people remembering Terry Funk, and all the clips of him and seeing how like widely beloved he was, like there isn't one bad Terry Funk story out there, but yeah, it was in a tough day. It was nice to see that, wasn't it, Joe?
It was. I wasn't nearly as well prepared for the news as horrible as it is to say, thought I was. Right, a couple months ago, there was a moment in which Dave did a tweet about Terry's the greatest, and a lot. We all kind of were aware this day was pretty fast approaching, unfortunately. But I was not nearly as ready for that as I kind of hoped, because when my timeline was filled with it, it was a lot, and it was jarring because he felt immortal in so many ways, like he felt like a guy who'll be with us forever. And I think a big part of that is because there's two things with Terry. It's the career, and you can break down the chapter by chapter and all the great moments he produced as a pro wrestler and as a promo and a personality and just a storyteller. And he probably is the medium's greatest in that regard. Everything Terry did was a story in some way or another, as we saw yesterday with some of the towels. But, that's the individual's body of work. But I think why Terry's so unique and why someone like myself was so kind of heartbroken, I was talking to friends of mine who were the same, is he represents something much bigger than his own career. And that's saying something considering how big his own career is. But, Terry is, in a lot of ways, kind of like a mythical figure to wrestling nerds, because he was everywhere, and he always did it with such enthusiasm and joy and optimism as to what wrestling is. And it's something we all struggle to keep at times, right? Like there's a lesson in that in terms of like, look, wrestling drives us all nuts at times, but we love it. And Terry that was always central to his work, and so I think there's a lot of emotions that are kind of tied to that as well as the career. It's like Terry was bigger than just the matches he had and the promos he cut, but he cut some of the greatest promos ever and wrestled some of the greatest matches ever. So it's take your pick in that regard. As I detailed in my feature for Purists last night, like I think he kind of changed my whole fandom. And I'll just tell the story briefly. Obviously, I wrote the feature.
Go ahead.
It's like, we all have heard, when you get into wrestling, you all hear Flair Steamboat, right? Like you hear about that trilogy all the time. Like their names just tied together. And so I started, when I first got the network, I watched that trilogy, and I had no idea as to what followed the trilogy, because it doesn't get talked about like that much compared to the trilogy itself. So it was like 3 a.m. because of course it was. And I'm watching these matches and I'm loving them, and I'm going for, and then I get to Wrestle War and I'm loving this rubber match. Well, not rubber match, but the third match. And Flair wins the belt, and it's his babyface turn, and it's this incredible moment. Jim Ross is in the ring, and Terry Funk, who commentated the second match, I believe, is a judge for the match. And if you've never seen it, pause on this stream, go and watch Wrestle War, the post match, because it's worth getting the experience I had, because I didn't know what was about to happen. And Terry is like, in a very sort of friendly way, even while seeming incredibly dangerous and insane, he's kind of like, maybe give me a crack at the big one, maybe I could have a shot next. I mean, you're a great wrestler, Rick, and so on and so forth. And Rick gives him a pretty stern answer, and then Terry just kind of unravels. It's the greatest angle I've ever seen. And I often say, like, I think as a fan, I've been chasing the thrill that I got watching that angle ever since, because I was watching that 20 plus years after the fact, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I'd never even seen wrestling like that, let alone that particular angle. So that kind of changed my fandom, and I try to watch any Terry Funk I could possibly get my hands on, and that takes you in every which direction. That was my first exposure to All Japan, and all of the stuff he did there, first as NWA champion Terry Funk, as a kind of real wrestler, working the mat and having these classical 2 out of 3 falls matches, and then later, he's probably the most beloved American wrestler to ever go to Japan. I mean, by the end of his run there, it's like staggering the response he would get, and Dory too. But they loved Terry Funk, and in his book, he tells a great story about the the American wrestlers would kind of be dicks to the Japanese fans because that was the role you played, right? You were the evil foreigner. And he was like, I wouldn't. I was a babyface there. And Terry used to shave before he flew to Japan because he was a white meat babyface in Japan. And, him and Dory, the matches there with like the Sheik and Abby, like, my God, those matches are incredible. Like horror scenes brought to life. So there's so much. Of course, everyone knows what he did for ECW and, and what that kind of meant to wrestling at the time. But he was everywhere, and there's just a few memories that come to mind. But it was very, very sad last night because while we all feel inspired to celebrate legends when they leave us, it's still, there is something jarring about all of those clips suddenly having a different context because he's gone now. And it's just, it doesn't feel right. It's a strange one. So I was glad to get the feature out there and kind of talk it through with a couple of friends because we were all just feeling the same way, which is like, man, he just meant so much to us. It's weird. But great pro wrestler, probably the greatest ever.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, very deflating, even though it kind of felt like, like I say, kind of somewhat expected that the day could come at any time. He'd been in pretty bad shape the past later years, I believe he suffered a hernia or something along those lines in 2016, 2017. Yep. Then even as recently, I believe he was diagnosed with Parkinson's and those kind of things, and he was in assisted living. Then he was his wife Vicky passed away in
2018,
around that time, like the late 2010s, definitely. But that was he'd been with her his whole life. They'd been together the whole life, and apparently that was, according to people close to him, that was a huge hit towards him, and unsurprising. But yeah, it's very you can't really brace yourself for someone as impactful as that passing away. Charlie, you said when you broke the news to your dad, it kind of he was a huge fan as well. It just shows how he crossed across the different generations. So what was kind of your dad's go-tos Terry Funk stuff?
Oh, my dad loved Terry Funk so much, and my dad's I've talked about my dad on this podcast so many times. He's one of the reasons I am a wrestling fan and I do what I do. So telling him about anyone from his generation passing's never easy, but with Terry Funk it just hit a lot harder because that's someone he showed me and was you need to know everything about this wrestler because he was just so special to this business. And he's right, Terry Funk is the most incredible wrestler ever, to be honest. It doesn't really get better than the Funker. And he loved his tag matches with Dory Funk in Japan, and he was just you need to help me find these again. I haven't watched them in so long. So it was hard last night, just going back and watching a bunch of stuff with him and reminiscing about Terry Funk's career. But yeah, it sucks, man. Losing legends is never easy. But this one, especially for me, was this was one of the first wrestlers we bonded over. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard to put into words, really, how you feel about things like this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just hope Terry Funk's family's doing okay and they've got the support they need as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of similar to our, sorry, Monty, just quickly to the point about kind of sharing those things. The match probably my family has watched the most together is War Games 94 with Terry's one of his more ridiculous showings in which everything he does is an isolated bit and it could be gift worthy. I clipped some up today where he falls down twice before he even makes contact with anyone in the match. He's 50 at that point, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, he was definitely someone you could enjoy in that setting. And also before we, I know Manny to speak about, but you mentioned Vicky, right? And we have to, know Terry, that was why he didn't want to be the NWA World Champ anymore. Terry loved wrestling, but he was very aware there are things bigger than wrestling. And that was why he wanted to save his marriage, and he did so. And if anyone's never seen Beyond the Mat, it's a tough watch for a lot of parts, but watch the Terry Funk portion of it because it's so sincere and lovely. And you see poor Vicky try to get Terry to retire, and he was never going to. It was 1997. He was wrestling 2 weeks later or whatever. He was in the Rumble the next year. So it's it's very, very special stuff.
Yeah, so the story with the the first. I believe they actually got divorced in like the mid to late 70s, like you said, when he was doing the NWA World's Title run. You know, it's a crazy schedule, but Ric Flair talks about it every time he gets a chance, working all those dates. And, he wasn't at home and it affected his family life. And, he decided to give up the NWA World Champion, give up being the most important person in professional wrestling to, work on his family life and save his marriage. And that he did do. And as I previously mentioned, they stayed together to the very end, man. So he was absolutely worth it. And as you said, Joe, there's definitely things bigger than wrestling. But Manny, give you a little chance to speak as well. I know you said you've, you haven't got the kind of same connection that some of us have to Terry Funk. Of course, that's more than understandable. He goes very far back, Yeah,
I mean, wait.
What's up?
I don't know if you want to see I can keep going. So my connection to Funk is like, I saw when I was getting out of school, and it was kind of devastating because I was just like, how do I even like fathom somebody like that passing? Because, like you said, like some guys, same thing when Kobe passed to me, is like you don't see guys like Terry Funk or Kobe just passing because because like they're such iconic people in their industry. And I don't know if I can keep going.
Yeah, there's been some pretty brutal news as Bray Wyatt been talking about this, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course, it's understandable, Manny. So for those that don't know, Triple H has just announced that he received a call and has been informed of the tragic news that WWE family member for life, Bray Wyatt, also, of course, his real name, Wyndham Rotunda, has unexpectedly passed away earlier today. Our thoughts are with his family, and we ask that everyone respect their privacy at this time. Absolutely shocking, stunning, news. Something that you could never expect. Mike Rotunda was even, I believe, he said in an interview last week that he was expecting, Bray Wyatt to make a return to WWE pretty soon. So this is definitely a huge, unfathomable shock to the wrestling world. And of course, of course, it's just came out just now, like 4 minutes ago. So we're all kind of processing it. So. You can't, got nothing at all against Manny kind of getting a bit thrown off.
I saw one comment about it, and I apologize to whoever commented, but I was just hoping and praying it was like, some YouTube shit.
I saw the comment too, and I was like, I don't know if I should keep. That's why I was struggling at first, because I was like, should I power through that or what's going on? Then you see multiple of them, and you're just like,
It was very, very scary. A couple of weeks ago, Bray was in the news, and it was like the story was the thing he'd gone through was the way it was almost phrased, right? It was life threatening, and we talked about how scary that is. So just unfathomable, and just what a tragedy, man. How old was Bray? He's mid-30s, probably, right?
Yeah, I don't even think
no age. Whatever. It's terrible.
Absolutely no age.
Yeah, awful news. It's very difficult, I've done a lot of shows, but you're never going to be able to just. It's very difficult to react to that many, so don't worry about it. I mean, there's nothing you can say after something like that. 36 years old, every single person who does stuff like this, writes about wrestling, talks about wrestling, had range of opinions on Bray, but I don't think you could ever accuse him of being anything less than interesting, right? He was always super popular and had a hell of an impact, and he wasn't done, so it's just unfathomable, the news that just broke. So, I mean, we're not even a year removed from his return, which was like big business. And I remember talking about that at the time, and I don't know what you can possibly say other than just all the best to his family. He's got young kids, and obviously his dad, and so on and so forth. It's brutal.
Yeah, he's got the whole family, and of course, it was a tight family as well, and one of the wrestling families. So it's been a very, very dark past 24 hours or so, heartbreaking stuff, man. Obviously, again, it's to go from Terry Funk, one that we knew, like I've mentioned a couple of times already, that could happen like any day now. And even still knowing that, still being so like deflated and kind of just taking the life out of it, and then to get hit by this as well, someone who was, like not too far off the prime, like you said, he's in his 30s, it seemed like he had just got over something that was very scary and, life-threatening as was reported recently. And like I said, his dad done an interview not that long ago saying that things were kind of looking on the up, and he was looking like hopefully soon coming back to WWE and get back involved in the mix. And as it says in Triple H's announcement, it unexpectedly earlier on he passed away. So it's brutal. It's whenever anything like this happens, especially when it happens to someone so young, they've got a family, someone who's of course, everyone knows that like Bray Wyatt has definitely he had his own unique way of doing wrestling, and that's what he'll be remembered for, regardless of how divisive it could have been. But him as a person was again, like much like Funk, you wouldn't hear bad Bray Wyatt stories. You would not hear them. Like him as a person, people love Bray Wyatt. He'd help people out backstage. He'd be very friendly with everyone. Everyone, referred to him as just super like helpful and open and kind and. Just a loving character. And even though he didn't do like a lot of, like he's never been like a big tweeter in the public eye and stuff like that. But like, when he would have something to say, like especially like when Brody passed, it's like, he wore his heart on his sleeve, man. But yeah, this is.
I will say, like, I wasn't a big Bray fan. I wasn't even watching during his peak and all that, but. Even though I wasn't a fan, but man, that WWE universe really did love him. Like, I was shocked by when he came back and that reaction he got and all that, and then how he drew like the craziest ratings every time he was back, every time he was on TV, and it was just, I mean, you can definitely say like a lot of stuff that he tried wasn't for everybody, but when it worked, and just how it drew people in.
To your point, I think in a lot of ways, and it's so hard to kind of piece all these things together at once. And before we go any further, because we're obviously going to just talk this through here, folks, on the air, but obviously the most important thing is wrestling is secondary, right? Like, and that's the most important. But to Manny's point, I do think the amount of buzz his return garnered, I think will be a real kind of a lasting legacy in a lot of ways, right? Because the way he left was not particularly flattering, and they kind of closed the door on him the way they did, and he had that infamous kind of WrestleMania send-off, and through sort of just social media buzz and kind of creative marketing, they built this thing, and I mean, it's a classic moment, and that's, I think when you kind of look back on, unfortunately now, what is this whole story, it's like that kind of speaks to who he was. He could really capture the imagination with very little, so. Yeah, I'm with you.
That'll probably be the sentiment that he's most remembered for. He's like how creative he could get and how he could capture people's imaginations. Exactly like you just said. He was special in that sense. He wasn't afraid to try things for better and for worse at times. And no matter what people thought of some of the stuff that he did do, because he was out there, very openly out there. And like I said, he wasn't afraid to try different things and stuff. But whatever he would do would gather like so much momentum. It's like remember when like he first debuted the Fiend, and it's like this shouldn't really work in wrestling. Yeah. It's almost like it's so ridiculous. But when he first introduced the Fiend, like that presentation, etc., and when he was just taking out the legends, like they really had something special in terms of
absolutely. I always remember at that time. Sorry, man, quickly. I always remember at that time a friend of mine who stopped watching wrestling years ago, being like, "Who's this Fiend guy? This is the coolest thing I've seen in years." When I told him it was Bray, he was like, "Okay, that makes sense." But it was that thing caught on, man. That was red hot when that first emerged.
Really, really did.
Yeah.
He had so much ranges. Sorry, man. Go ahead.
I actually went back and because I was like, when I was getting back and I was like, man, I don't get this Bray thing. I don't know why everybody sees him, but and I went back and I watched the angle when the Fiend debuted, and I left that angle just being like, that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I don't know if it's gonna work in wrestling, but it was just so awesome. And then I know this is probably not the time, but I was like, the biggest what if to me was just like, I really wanted to see Bray in movies and direct because he had such like a crazy stuff for horror. I kind of just wish that I saw that play out in movies and see how he would have viewed horror films in that genre. But I mean,
definitely seemed like there was like some real potential for like his level of creativity to get into kind of that sort of art, short films, real films produced, that sort of thing. And it's very unfortunate that we'll actually never get to see that, because it always felt like something that he could always end up in, whether it was during or after wrestling, because like I said, man, he really had one of the most unique, probably definitely one of the most unique minds and creative minds of this era of wrestling,
Sure.
Again, much like Terry Funk, but in a very different vein. It's like there'll never be like another Bray, like someone as close to Bray as there was, because like people always thought, like, when he was first really coming on the scene, getting really over as he did, it's there's definitely something to, like I was talking about Funk and having like different phases in his career. Of course, it spanned over a much longer time. It spanned over like 3 different decades. The 3 main eras that people talk about with Funk, like the NWA World Champion, the 89, late 90s, early 90s stuff, and then the ECW, like late 90s and all that sort of stuff. Like with Bray, you had like, Cult Leader, the Fiend, and of course like this
Funhouse. Right.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, man. Like very different reinvention of himself,
Yeah. I think, it wasn't my thing, and I reviewed it at the time, and it wasn't for me necessarily, but the Funhouse match with Cena is like an iconic piece of like pandemic wrestling entertainment. Like what they did with that, even though it broke my brain as someone who was looking for a headlock takeover, was like genuinely the amount of, because I remember doing a show after that, and like the response to that match was staggering. They did an amazing job with that, and it really resonated with people. And it's very, very different, to say the least. So, it's really tough.
I want to go back to Terry Funk real quick. I want to finish.
I want to try to get. I
just want to say this one thing about him. It's like he was a giant. Like I don't think you can ever get an iconic guy like him again in wrestling. And I didn't know much about him, but the only thing I didn't know was he was always ahead of the time when it came to wrestling, because Dave liked to make that point very clear whenever he talked about him. And
willing to adapt.
Yeah, and this man loved pro wrestling so much that even when his body was failing him, he just never wanted to be out of the industry. And to me, that's just like a different kind of love and passion that you rarely see. And I think we just lost a good one with them.
Absolutely. We lost one of the greats, and we've lost one of the most unique and most popular wrestlers of this era as well in Bray. So, again, like a unbelievably devastating like 1-2 punch over the past 24 hours. It's hard to find the words, but we're trying our best,
There's no right way. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah. It's like we didn't know the man, so you naturally turn to remembering his career and talking about kind of different parts of his career. But there's no positive spin possible when a guy at that age leaves you. It's just devastating. So all the best to friends and family, of which there were many, because as you said in the locker room, he was like one of the most beloved guys. So yes, brutal.
Yeah, a very again, and a very, very tough past 24 hours. But there's kind of Manny's point about Funk. Yeah, man, Terry Funk, he did absolutely adore this business, and he embodied it, and he proved it with his actions, throughout his different eras, and just kind of touch on him as
he was a definition of for the love of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. He's as a wrestler, Terry Funk are kind of the word that jumps out to me the most is instincts. He was very instinctual. That was kind of his. He just knew what to do at the right time. Like I doubt he was someone that ever really planned his matches out too much. He was almost known for that, to just kind of you go out there and you do Joe, you always reference it, what he says many times in his book. You go out there and you just do the dance, you know.
Indeed, yeah.
And you know, he just knew what to do at the right time, and it didn't always look super pretty, but it felt real in the moment, and he was able to kind of capture your imagination in special ways like that, even though it didn't look the most the prettiest at times. You mentioned like the Wrestle War stuff. No, the War Games.
Yeah.
The War Games match when he's stumbling all over, he's falling through the ring, he's doing this, he's doing like he's all over the place, you know. And it's not in like a shitty wrestler kind of doesn't know what he's doing way. It's in this is a guy who's kind of up there in age, who's kind of, you know, stumbling around.
Crazy,
and, you know, he's a bit crazy and he's not quite the perfect athlete, you know. But yeah, Funk the Wrestler, Joe, very instinctual.
Absolutely, yeah. He, you know, as you mentioned, I use that phrase a lot, and it's about kind of the feel that the best wrestling has, and that kind of root emotion of you know, those intense exchanges and the violence and the hate and the passion that our favorite wrestling contains. And he was a master of that. He understood what the fans wanted. He understood what the fans thought. He understood what the fans feared. And that made him singular. Very, very special. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I really hope. I don't know if you guys saw the clip of his Hall of Fame speech about how he hopes he gets buried in the wrestling ring.
All right. Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
I hope they do that because I think it's always cool when somebody when they pass, everybody's before they pass they want to be buried with the thing that they love doing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I think that's just awesome. Even in heaven, he wants to keep wrestling with his friends and stuff. So I hope they do it.
Like, even in his late years, when he's like, you know, his memory was kind of, you know, betraying him and the Parkinson's and stuff. It's like it became like a thing. Like he was known for like really loving having visitors and going to see his friends when he could and stuff, and kind of, I guess, just talk about the good old days, you know.
Yeah.
I like that. Have you seen the clip of him at Eddie Kingston, or he tries to beat up Eddie Kingston and stuff?
Yeah,
like that?
he does it. It's like an angle from like 2015. 2015, Terry Funk doing an angle with Eddie.
He does a DDT on the floor and everything. It's awesome.
Yeah, Terry Funk, man, the real fucking deal. Saying before we went live, he very much makes you. He kind of embodies the, you know, when you kind of watch like old wrestling, you know, and like it's heated, it's a bit rough, it's, you know, it's hard hitting, it just feels more authentic, and you think like they don't make wrestlers like this anymore, you know, that kind of old man take that you get sometimes, you know, like Terry Funk's very much that, you know, like they don't make him like Terry, and they never did make him like Terry. He's a true one of one, you know. Very, very just special wrestling. Manny touched on his Hall of Fame speech, 2009. He went in with his brother Dory. Had many, I guess, retirements, although some of them weren't quite official. You know, there was a lot. He had a lot of matches through the years where people thought, like, okay, this is it. You know, there was 1983, the iconic forever promo that he cut, the very emotional retirement in Japan. There was suspicions of it after the Flair stuff in '89, Joe. So there was that one. Then '97, that's the one that's covered on.
On Beyond the Mat.
Yeah, that's the one. Then he wrestles Bret Hart, I think it is. Yeah.
Which he then adjusted to as his last match in Amarillo, which I think it may have ended up still being, but yeah, he wrestled on for another 19 years. So
yeah, I mean, I think the first Terry match I've ever seen was him versus Onita in FMW. Oh. So, because when people talk,
that's a hell of an introduction.
Because when I first heard of Terry Funk, I was just like, besides Dave talking about him, people said he was this great wrestler, classical and all that stuff, and I watched him versus Onita, and I said, I don't know if this is the same guy everybody's talking about. Like, this guy's over here going through barbed wire, exploding, and all that. And then the second match I saw was him versus Bruiser Brody, I think, in All Japan. It might be it might have been in one of the finals or something, and he's all it's a famous match where he's all covered in blood and he's trying to run through the crowd and all. Like those are my 2 introductions to him, and then I saw the Lights Out match with Ric Flair. So those are my first 3 matches I saw this man. I quit. So I think I'm gonna go more into it when I have time and everything because
there's a lot to get into.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And as Joe said at the kind of the top end of the podcast, it takes you on a hell of a journey, if you especially if you do it in the way of like kind of picking your spots of different parts, if you go like ECW Funk back to like, an NWA World Title match to Chainsaw Charlie.
For everyone with his careers, like he did so much in his career. Like you can show him to any wrestling fan, and they'll find something that they like.
Absolutely, there was talk of retirement when he was wrestling like Sabu, in I don't know, like 2099 maybe. And then obviously in the 2000s, I'm sure there was like 2 or 3. One of them was Tommy Dreamer, I think.
He worked One Night Stand in 06, so
he did.
Yeah. And the fact that Terry learned how to do a moonsault at age 50 is such an incredible pop. Like, how do you even back in the 90s when you learn how to do something like that, how do you even like practice that? I mean, like
his moonsault was pretty crazy. It was like a very crooked. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was like those diagonal. The diagonal, whatever it's called.
It makes sense for somebody like in modern times, like now doing it, but somebody in the 90s that's 50 with how shitty like medicine was and all that, and I'm like, I don't know, like probably not even taking care of himself, knowing like perfect nutrition, even trying to attempt something like that and learning at age 50 is just something so crazy for me to imagine. And he fucking did it, bro. I mean, and then he has that iconic Funk You shirt. I mean, I think I'm gonna have to get now. So I mean, great man, or I don't know, like a great wrestler.
Absolutely, one of the greats, and yeah, like I said before, as a person, you don't hear bad Terry Funk stories. You don't hear people talking ill of him at all, and that'll definitely be a sentiment that gets echoed quite a lot over the next few days. Very beloved, very admired and respected. And AO's joining us.
I'm not here to stay. I just wanted to let y'all know. WWE just announced that Bray Wyatt is passing away.
We know.
Not sure if you're all fucking.
Yeah, we're aware. We've I'm echoing on your end, AO.
Am I echoing?
There we go. Yeah, we as the news broke, we got straight into it, of course, and kind of we touched onto it, of course, and we done our best to remember Bray Wyatt in the moment. It was very, very tough, as we all kind of, we all kind of took it in together, with kind of like the live chat and that, and it was very, we all kind of processed, well, still are processing it now, and we're all kind of going through it, and we talked about Bray, and we tried to remember him as best we could in that moment. And I'm sure we'll be talking quite a bit more about him as we go through kind of this is... I don't think we're going to do the Dynamite review and talk about the news today. We'll probably stay on for a little bit longer and just kind of remember the rest of...
It's hard, isn't it? It's very...
Yeah, it's hard to pivot from like we was talking about it even before, that it would be hard to pivot from the Terry Funk stuff into kind of wrestling, but I guess we were going to attempt to try and do something like that. But now on top of the Bray stuff as well, it's like there's a time and a place to just review graps, and
it all feels so trivial, right? When news like that breaks, it's very, very difficult to analyze and debate points of a wrestling show, because ultimately it doesn't matter, right? Like it's brutal, man.
It just makes you realize how like kind of wrestling is sometimes. Just like, because look, the thing is that I wasn't a big fan of Bray, and I was like that. But then when something like this happens, you're just like, well, maybe you should take advantage of all the wrestlers and all that are on TV, because you never know.
It's important. Yeah, it is, and it's a sentiment that's very hard to express frequently without sounding like a kind of enjoy all wrestling, sycophant or whatever the hell. But, the truth is your favorite wrestlers, hopefully they live a life long like Terry Funk and you reflect on it in 50 years. Unfortunately, wrestling's not always that way, right? I mean, life isn't always that way. We were reminded that in January with Jay Briscoe.
Exactly.
Wrestling, there's a lot of pro wrestlers and they're going to leave us at different times. And I don't think anyone on this screen would list Bray Wyatt as a favorite of theirs, but that's so much less important than the dude leaving behind his family.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
piggyback off what Joe's saying. I think when we criticize wrestlers, we all need to remember that they're people and they have loved ones, people that are missing them. Bray's a husband. He's a father. He's a son. He's a brother. Like I always said, I personally liked Bray, but we all poked fun at his last run.
Of course.
And it's like I think that's fine, but you just need to make sure that when you're critiquing something, you critique the performer and not the person, and not get spiteful and be unhinged and fucking berate people because you don't like what they're doing on fucking Friday Night SmackDown or whatever. Like just be nicer, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because I know people got really nasty when it got to Bray, just to get some dunk points off and shit.
Right.
Absolutely. So,
absolutely.
Like I said, we'll probably go we'll probably round this off at like the hour mark. We've been going about 40 minutes so far, and like I said, we'll kind of just do our best to like we set out to do with Terry Funk, remembering Terry Funk, and of course we'll come back and forth in and out of Bray Wyatt, and we'll remember him as well because like we touched on earlier on, he's had a very unique career, and he always managed to garner momentum and traction and make people kind of care about what he was doing, even if it was to critique or to, he definitely had like a cult-like following as well. He was very much his style of wrestling was you either hate it or you love it,
Yes.
And he definitely did have his fans that absolutely, he had one of the larger kind of cult-like followings in the business. You know what I mean? It was almost comparable to what you see like the Diva stands and stuff. Yeah, that's what I mean. You got the Bray Wyatt, the Fireflies.
I mean, I think if you liked Bray, right, he was so singular in that way. Like most wrestlers, you can lump guys together in terms of the type of wrestler, the style of wrestler, but Bray was so unique. If you loved Bray, there was no, second Bray coming around the corner. When he was gone, people were desperate for him to come back. And you could tell. I mean, we talked about it earlier, Manny brought it up, but it's like, it was staggering how much people anticipated his return in a really cool way, because it showed you how much he resonated with people. A lot of wrestlers, when they're off TV, nature of the beast is they're quickly forgotten, right? Out of sight, out of mind. That was never the case.
Ever. It's like, when's Bray coming back? When's Bray coming back? And then when he finally did come back, it was like the wrestling world stopped when the fucking whistling went on and everybody, the Fireflies had their cameras out and shit. And like that was objectively a dope moment. Like even the fucking Fed batters and shit had nothing to say. They had nothing they could say in that moment, bro. They're just like, all right, man, y'all won tonight. Like,
then he immediately moved like 4,000 tickets for SmackDown or something, and it's like, this guy is a star, man. On a different level. Yeah, he was a real star, and like the way the industry goes now, it's kind of like, it's all about the brand, like there isn't as many like singular draws. Like there is definitely still a handful out there, like TV ratings and ticket movers, but Bray genuinely was one of the small handful of draws still left in the business, and I'm sure if the return run that it seemed that there was at least talks and plans of that coming to fruition one day down the road. Obviously, we won't get that now, but that definitely, I'm sure, would have been successful, numbers wise, because that's Bray Wyatt. Joe said it earlier on. He managed to really creatively capture people's imaginations, and you'd get people to go with stuff, man. Like the QR codes for the before the, I believe it was Extreme Rules in 2022. The QR codes, the little games that he would play with social media and stuff, the hints,
people were addicted to those QR codes like they were fucking crap.
People were breaking down song lyrics and stuff. Like it was, he really and even internally in WWE, like they were kind of like they were, he kind of taught them a new way of kind of approaching social media and doing other things. So it's like, even on that level, it's like even the people backstage calling the shots had something to learn from Bray Wyatt, and that's on top of all the wrestlers that he would help with promos and stuff. And like, with Bray, it's like have any of you guys ever seen like his old like PC NXT promos?
Yeah.
Like he was instantly a good promo and kind of
that
just
was my favorite stuff.
Yeah, that was some of my favorite shit of his.
He was he just instantly knew how to kind of captivate you with his words, and he would talk in a certain rhythm and tone that was just very unique to him. And I've used that word a million times, but he was just unique, and there'll never be another Bray Wyatt. I'm pretty certain of that, and again, even though he was very much a love or hate him creatively, but one thing you couldn't deny was the size of his star and that he was able to truly connect with his target audience, So, it's been a rough. It feels like we say this every year now, but it's been a rough year. It feels like for wrestlers passing and leaving us, especially like as heartbreaking as like Terry Funk or superstar Billy Graham may have been. They were. It was kind of more expected as they were more on the top end age wise and physically wise, whereas whereas like Jay Briscoe, this one now with Bray Wyatt is like it's the shock on top of it as well. And I guess I appreciate everyone who's kind of with us, kind of helping us, process it and kind of folks. Talk it out.
It's really difficult to navigate these things because it's like your instinctual responses. Like, let's remember our favorite things, and we've tried to do that, and we will continue to do that. But it's very, very difficult to have like a kind of uplifting instinctual response to news that tragic. Like, it's just awful.
Yeah.
There's, we can go through great promos and matches, and certainly that's his legacy and something to be very proud of. He had a very memorable career, but ultimately a 36-year-old man's just died suddenly and unexpectedly. So it's just tragic. For anyone who's watching this that's a big fan, I send love to you because I know from my experience, unfortunately, as wrestling fans, we have experience with that, right? Like losing someone that's work you loved. I send the best, and we all do, because that's people that don't love wrestling the way we love wrestling, and the way you watching this, if you're watching a WrestlePurists podcast, probably love wrestling, will never get how much these moments like affect us, So I send my best to watching.
I'll never forget like a single thing about like what I was doing, where I was at, what was happening when I found out Eddie Guerrero passed away.
Right.
And it was just like, so I don't wish that on anybody else. So like for the Bray like super fans, because he really, like we said, we've been saying, Bray connected to his fans on a completely different fucking level than pretty much like 99.99% of performers today. So it's just terrible to hear.
Yeah, and that's kind of like fundamentally like what matters most with wrestling is having that connection with people, and whether you was kind of like into something creatively, whether it was for you or not. If a wrestler could connect in the way that the two wrestlers that we've just recently lost did, then that makes them undeniable.
Stuff like this don't mean a thing. Like. In 20 years, there'll be someone sitting in this chair, maybe not this exact one, but on a screen like this, talking about professional wrestling, and they'll say their first memory was Bray Wyatt doing, insert crazy thing or whatever it may be. I promise you, that's how wrestling works.
Attacking Jerry Lawler when the lights go off,
I always try and straight. I mean, it is what it is. I think everyone who watches this knows what our intention is with these shows, but it's like we don't represent the general wrestling fan. And the general wrestling fan now loves Bray Wyatt. But let me tell you, the kids who grew up on his work, he's an iconic WWE character, genuinely.
Even spin-off characters like Alexa Bliss, The Fiendess, was like, kids love
we always
that
talk
shit,
about
man.
it, like the Lily doll, and that's a perfect
Became
example.
the number one seller in the shop for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Bro, as a spin-off of Bray. Like, that's insane.
that's where kind of perspective is everything as wrestling. When you get as deep as we are, and anyone watching this probably is, it's like, it's always worth having that perspective. I often say to people, remember the stuff you were into as a kid in wrestling, right? It probably wasn't the regal forearms, that got you into wrestling. And that's important. Like, wrestling needs those characters and it needs those personalities. If wrestling was exclusively things that I liked, wrestling wouldn't last very long.
Right.
And Bray's in a lot of ways symbolized that in terms of his willingness to be brave creatively, do things that were at times too much for wrestling, right? I mean, that's part of his legacy, and there's no shame in it. He tried.
Yeah.
It wasn't all for me by any means, but I can appreciate there was always a sincerity to it and a pride he took in doing things his way. And I think that's his legacy. We've all kind of circled a few times over here. I think it's not just his creativity, but his willingness to be as daring as possible as they would allow him to be with that. To hits and misses, but he always swung. And there's a lot of, kind of pride to take in that, certainly.
Yeah,
100%. And someone who swings as hard as Bray would swing, it's like there is going to, 100%, and he did, and but when he hit, he would connect on a very, very special level for wrestlers of this day and age, like I mentioned as well, he had almost like a cult-like following, they've got their own name for themselves, it's And so they were having a field day when he was doing all the hints about coming back last year, and that was kind of, it was one of the hottest things in wrestling, and he wasn't even on screen yet. It was that was kind of the effect he was able to have on wrestling,
I think even like Bray's biggest detractors, they have to concede that like he really, really, really gave a fuck. Like he really cared about the characters. He really cared about the stories that he was trying to tell, whether you liked it or not. Like he put a lot of effort into this. Like he approached professional wrestling as an art form. You know what I mean? And you have to respect somebody like that.
Well, he had fucking Bray Wyatt had people like, at least his fan base, kind of like that. They were all in on like Alexa Bliss beating Randy Orton. Like he could, Bray Wyatt could capture people's imagination, especially people that were into his stuff, in a way that was really just something. And you can look at different kind of checkpoints, like what I just mentioned, and other things as well. But he was able to pull off some really, really crazy shit, man.
You remember the match with Randy when he got lit on fire? Remember that one?
Oh my God, yeah.
That's fucking awesome, bro. Like,
that was just another Sunday for Bray, Like that was just one of the things he did. That was crazy. That was an awesome visual.
He was, like I said, touched on kind of like how he got promos straight away, but like his level of character work was very kind of like the range you would be able to show. Obviously the Firefly Funhouse stuff is like a really good example of that. Like he could, he was genuinely like doing the morning time kid show character. He was doing it, man. He was doing it. He's a very talented guy. Obviously, like I said, his stuff in pro wrestling creatively will always be kind of divisive, and what will be something super like out there creatively, and that's kind of what he'll be remembered for. But in terms of just like being a talented performer, he absolutely was that.
No
like
one questioned that.
Yeah,
100%. Like he understood how to capture the imagination of a live crowd. He could go out there and speak as slowly and take as much time as he wanted, and the crowd would be on the literally dying to hear
every fucking word.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then like the creative visuals and stuff he was often capture people's imagination with was definitely something very special. Regardless of how you feel, like I always touched on, it's like even his detractors have to kind of give it up to him in certain aspects, because, like I said, when people connect the way that Wyatt and Funk did, it's like it makes them undeniable in certain aspects of this game, and it's always heartbreaking to lose two people for very different ends of their careers and lives, but both of them all had families and loved ones and fans, and it's it's been a very, very, very tough day or so to process as a wrestling fan, because that's what we all are fundamentally. I know we do these podcasts or whatever, and we like to think we can review things or whatever, but we are just all a bunch of fans along with everyone else in the live chat trying to kind of like process what we're kind of the news that we've had over the past day. So again, we appreciate everyone for kind of being there with us, and we hope we've been able to kind of make it at least a little bit more I don't even know,
Yeah, it's just I mean, I think a lot of people, and if I wasn't doing this show, I'd be doing it the same. So I mean, it's an insult, but a lot of people would be processing this, alone. They were just seeing the news on their phone, and we were on the air, which obviously has its own roller coaster. But if someone can hop on here and it just hearing people talk about it helps, then I hope we did that. There's not much more, unfortunately. Like you could give me 2 weeks to prepare to talk about Bray, because again, with Terry Funk, his story as a performer was complete, and unfortunately we were beginning to prepare ourselves for what happened yesterday, sad as it is. And as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't prepared, but with Bray, like, you can give me weeks to prepare. Like, there's only so much you can say about that kind of thing. That's just brutal. Like, us all talking about this now with his career in hindsight, the idea that his story is finished, like, it's
terrible,
tragic,
bro.
It's tragic.
It's fucking awful.
It's awful.
Yeah, way too soon. Way too soon, and truly heartbreaking, devastating, and just shocking. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but literally his dad, like a week or two ago, after the report that Sean dropped, which was quite scary to hear, that he's just overcome like what could have been a life-threatening, career-threatening health issue.
Right.
And his dad coming on, and I believe he was talking with Bill Apter at like some sort of convention or something, and he was just like, "Yeah, man, hopefully pretty soon, looking to get Bray Wyatt back in WWE, back in the mix of things." And it's like, and then this hits us, and obviously Triple H said in the announcement that it's unexpectedly earlier on today, so it's it's brutal, man. It's brutal, and I hope we've at least been able to at least be some sort of company to you guys as we're all trying to process this news. But yeah, I appreciated everyone who's kind of tapped in. Charlie, Manny, Joe, your words, of course, AO especially as well, coming in when you didn't have to at all. You guys know I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who's tapped in as well. Quickly fly through some super chats, because of course people have sent them in throughout the show, so we'll get through some messages and then we're going to wrap up, because like I mentioned earlier, it would feel kind of so weird to transition out of what we spoke to kind of do like, let's review Dynamite and review this all in build. There's a time and a place. Maybe we'll do it later on in the week before Wembley or something, but just not right now, because it's simply not the time, and I'm simply not in the mindset to do it.
I'm gonna take my leave. I love everybody at WrestlePurists. I love everybody who supports us. Thank y'all so much. Just cherish the people in your lives, because nobody's here forever. So just make sure you appreciate them while you're here.
Absolutely, I appreciate you all. Hi, Karan, 100 rupees. Always appreciate you, brother. Is that coming off? On a slightly negative note, that AR fuck still stunk after a great match. How do you take someone back 2 weeks after they almost killed your friend? No, that was one of the more insane parts of AEW Dynamite I think I've ever seen. But we're not going to delve too much into it. Appreciate the super chat, so of course, from everyone so far. Another 100 rupees, Karan. Appreciate you. Best Dynamite Go Home show in yours. Generally thought both companies have forgotten how to do these, but that was electric. Jericho Ospreay felt big after. Yeah, they absolutely did have a good show last night, and they needed it as well. So it was good to see that they could pull it off. Frank 199, appreciate you. You know who's a good wrestler? Christian Cage, absolutely one of the greats. And after this week, he's one of many wrestlers that I'm gonna have even more of an appreciation for. So I appreciate you great wrestlers and the people that you really enjoy, because you never know when a week like this week is going to be around the corner. We love Christian Cage. Everyone on the screen loves Christian Cage. Matt84 199. TK won a contest where winner smoked out with Mox. That Mox video yesterday was it was everywhere, man. And you know why? Mox smoking that fire, bro. Playboy X499, appreciate it. 24 hours straight of riding a train and bus, transitioning, airport procedures, flying, and now I'm in London. God bless you, man. This is the lengths people are going for this Wembley show, and you're going to be part of history, bro. So, if you bump into any of us, say hi.
That's such an impressive feat that if you see me at Wembley, I'll cut your price on the 8x10. Right? So, only $50. So.
Absolutely, Darren Walker, £10. Appreciate you always, brother. A great weekend of wrestling. I'll be at FanFest on Saturday, even though no wrestlers are announced yet. Be at RevPro. If I see Charlie there, I'll say hello to her. And All In on Sunday. Can't wait for it. Yeah, man. This weekend, hopefully there's so much going on this weekend, like wrestling wise, in between the ring sort of stuff, and hopefully it can kind of, hopefully the wrestling world can kind of unite the way that they do many times and kind of, make it a little bit easier for all of us, Very big weekend ahead, absolutely. Branavan, this was a comment I brought up from earlier. Terry Funk is the only man to fight Mizawa, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, and Patrick Swayze. He was in Roadhouse, man. He was, and
he did some stuff with Sly. I know he was in. I forget the film's name, but I know he choreographed the fight at the end of Rocky V, which Rocky V doesn't have many streams, but the fight's pretty cool. And he choreographed that, and I believe he got. I think it was Dick Slater. I think he got the gig as Tommy Morrison's double. So he did some cool stuff in that regard.
Absolutely. Another chat I mentioned, I saw earlier, Yuzura Hart. Terry Funk refused to ever become a bitter old bit. Absolutely, and that cannot be echoed enough. He was always like super open minded. Dave Meltzer wrote in his his remembering article. I don't think it's his full obituary, but Dave Meltzer wrote a few words last night, and he said even in the 80s. In Japanese wrestling, when the Crush Girls were blowing up and everything, and a lot of people were kind of shunning it away and turning their nose up at it. He mentioned how Terry Funk and Bruiser Brody were they're better than most of the guys, and that was back in the 80s, and being a proponent of women's wrestling in Japan. So
even as late as 2019, when asked about AEW, he was very bullish on an alternative. And a lot of veterans are like, good luck. And considering what's ahead of us on Sunday, I think that speaks to kind of, again, he always had an optimism about wrestling. So definitely a big part of his legacy.
One of the beautiful people of wrestling, he really was. Mazfan84, $5, appreciate you very much. Funk represents passion and authenticity you don't see today in wrestling or even in pop culture. If wrestling ever had a patron saint, it's him. Rest in peace. Absolutely. We lost one of the good ones, man. Yuzura Hart, $5. Appreciate you very much, man. Hearing Bray pass while you all are actively eulogizing Terry Funk has really broken me. This sucks. Yeah, it's been like I've said many times, it's been a brutal past day or so, and you can never prepare for hearing those sort of things come out while you're on air. It's I immediately sympathised even more when it happened on. When it happened to Parker and the guys on Don't Go Live with the Jay Briscoe passing, he's again, it's you can't prepare for those things, It's real tough. Brian Buster 499, appreciate you. Absolutely brutal to you guys. Hope everyone is doing okay. Thank you guys for all that you do. Appreciate you very much, and thank you very much, Brian Buster. Very much appreciate all you guys very much. And Parker, of course, of Don't Go Live. We love Parker. He says, "Love y'all," and we love you, and we appreciate you too. And yeah, man, we're gonna wrap up. We've tried to do the best we can in trying to remember fondly Terry Funk, Bray Wyatt, professionally and as people, because both of them absolutely tick both of those boxes. And it's not one of those where it's like you fondly remember someone after they're gone. Like these are things that we would have said last week about them as people. you'd never hear bad stories about either of them. You know, you'd only hear good stories about them personally, in the family lives, etc., etc. You'd only hear good things about how helpful, open-minded, and just gentle people they were and seen and come across. So we've lost two of the good ones, and all thoughts go out to, you know, Terry Funk and Wyndham Rotunda's family and families, loved ones, fans, and as we've mentioned, it's appreciate your loved ones, you know, because you never know when a week like this is going to happen. And when I say loved ones, I mean people that you're a fan of, whether you know them or not, whether it's loved ones, whether that's your friends and family, you know, just people that you appreciate any part in your life. Really, you know, really smell the flowers, you know, because you never know when you're not going to be able to smell them anymore. And this week has been just absolutely brutal. And again, I hope over this weekend, with so much going on in wrestling, that, you know, the wrestling world can kind of unite, and we can all, you know, fondly remember these, you know, these heroes to some people of wrestling, you know, because, you know, that's the wrestling world has been very good at doing that in the past, and I'm sure they'll be able to pull it off again, and, you know, do right in the memory of Bray Wyatt and Terry Funk. So, again, appreciate everyone who's tapped in and kind of processed this with us as we've gone along. And, of course, my fellow co-host, Joe Hulbert, Manny the Hooper, Charlie, your words are always appreciated. And tonight, more than ever, you know, I wouldn't have held it against any of you if you had to, like, take a minute and just come off the stream at all or anything like that. And, you know, you've been here and you've been able to say some very, very beautiful words about two genuine legends, two very memorable, unique figures in wrestling, you know, and again, just kind of thank you again. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has got any other closing words, but
no, I just reiterate what you said, man. Like, you know, we do this stuff, and you have to be analytical, and you have to debate these things and so on. But if we, any of us, critique something that you like or someone that you like, never let that affect your enjoyment, because you never know how much longer you have to watch your favorite wrestler, you know, do the dance, so to speak. And you know, it's an important thing to remember, and it's very sentimental, and it's a hard thing to keep in mind when you get lost in the, you know, the daily up and down of what's happening in wrestling, or whether we like it at the moment or don't like it. But the truth is, we all love pro wrestling, and we have our favorites and our quirks in our fandom, and wherever those are for you, you know, cherish them and enjoy them, because they're not around forever. And, you know, especially tonight, if you're a big Bray Wyatt fan or something meant a lot to your fandom, I send love, because it's very, very painful for those of us that love pro wrestling. So, all the best.
Absolutely. But yeah, sending love out to everyone, and again to the families of, to the Rotunda family, to the Funk family, to fans, friends, family. You know, cherish your loved ones, man, because it's very important. And weeks like this just emphasize it. And, you know, again, hopefully the wrestling world can kind of unite together to remember these very special people. And again, like I said, apologies about not being able to kind of do the podcast as planned. I'm sure everyone kind of understands. Maybe we'll do a Dynamite review like tomorrow or something, or whatever. We'll review the AEW All In build or something like that. But like I've mentioned before, right now it's kind of, I'm not in the. I don't think any of us are in the right mind frame to be
it's
like.
just not the time and place.
Yeah, it's just, you know, not the time for it. But yeah, hopefully we'll be back tomorrow, maybe, depending on how things go. We're gonna play it by ear. Possibly might see myself and Joe tomorrow afternoon. Might see on Purist tomorrow evening, and you know, just keep an eye on the page, and you'll keep up to date with what we've got going on. Yes. But again, can't express enough how much I appreciate my fellow co-hosts and the people who have tapped in and processed with us. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.